So I'm learning to pay more and more attention to little signs and things that happen to me, especially my dreams, that can help me like with my memory, because I remember very little from my childhood, especially not a lot from like the age of 5. However, lately there's a lot of things that's been coming back to me, and I'm trying to make sure that I program myself to where even the littlest things that I remember, I'm sure if it's coming back to my memories for a reason. So I'm trying to make sure that I keep records of the things that I remember, because I just never know how much it could help me to figure out my true identity, help me to heal from the things that I've been through, the things that I've experienced, and share that with you guys. So hopefully someone else who's going through something like an identity crisis, just trying to figure out who you are, maybe it will inspire you to write down little things that you remember. I don't care if it's the smallest, most minute thing that is probably random, because as you can see, my videos are all over the place. Nothing is in chronological order. I just put things out there either as it happens or when I actually remember it. And it's funny because I've been having the most vivid dreams lately, and I just recently had a dream about my karmic father, the man who I was told that was my father, and that's who I believe to be my father, from as long as I can remember. And I don't know, the dream was all over the place, of course. So of course, as I speak on it, it's going to be all over the place, but obviously I had that dream for a reason. So obviously maybe it's going to help me to continue my quest to figure out who I am. The man that I was told is my biological father, his name was Alfonso Franklin Kitt. He changed it to Simeon, and that's because he was a Hebrew Israelite, and so he wanted to change his name. He was the only child, from what I remember. His mom, my so-called grandmother, her name was Dorothy Kitt, if I'm not mistaken. I know I went over there a lot, and I remember she lived on Vernon Avenue. For all of you who are from Brooklyn, I think it was 300 Vernon Avenue, if I'm not mistaken. And I have to be honest about it, my karmic grandmother, she treated me very well. I actually loved her very much, and she loved my karmic dad like very much. That was her only child, so she loved the ground he walked on, even though he turned out to fall victim to being a drug addict. So I know there's a few things I remember about him. I do remember him being extremely intelligent. I mean extremely. He was smart as a whip. He's one of those people that you may mistaken his intellect by his looks. And it's funny because I hear things like that about myself, which is actually super insulting. I don't know who thinks it's a compliment to tell someone you're smarter than you look, but that's not a compliment. But my karmic father was one of those people who, he was for the streets. He had a lot of street smarts, but you would not be able to tell that he had a lot of book smarts as well. And as I said in one of my videos before, he was a police officer at one time. I know that because I saw a picture of him in his uniform at the police desk. So I know he was a police officer at one time. I know he was put off the force. One story I heard, he was put off the force because he was doing some illegal stuff, things like making arrests and stealing the paraphernalia from the evidence locker and things like that. So I heard a lot of different stories. So you never know. I heard he was removed from the force due to drugs. I heard a lot of different things. I know in my dream, I couldn't believe when I woke up, I was like, oh my gosh, I actually remember that. I remember when he used to be a bodyguard for Al Sharpton. I remember that clearly. I remember it because I remember the day when he showed me a picture of himself standing next to Al Sharpton in the Daily News in Brooklyn. It was the funniest thing ever. And that's way back in the days when Al Sharpton first started out as a activist, and my karmic dad was one of his bodyguards. And if I'm not mistaken, from what I heard at least, I think Al Sharpton let him go because of his drug use. I think Al Sharpton let him go because of that, but I'm not sure, so I have to say alleged. But I remember that picture in the Daily News because I remember showing my friends that. But everybody knew him. Everybody not only knew him, but my karmic dad was a heavy hitter in the streets. I guess back in his days he used to run numbers or something like that, but from what I remember about him, everybody knew him. He was for the streets. He had goons. He was no joke. He was very, very well respected. And I know you don't normally hear that when you hear of a drug addict. And I mean, he took the heavy stuff, methamphetamines. He took the heavy stuff, but he was not a game when it came to the streets. He had connections. I mean, connections is an understatement. He had connections you wouldn't believe. And if you mess with him, it's a problem. You mess with him, I don't even know anybody who would do that, to be honest. He was that well respected in the streets. He was that feared in the streets. And it's funny because he was head over heels in love with my karmic mother. He would do anything in the world for her, anything. I remember one time, oh my goodness, oh Lord. I remember one time she was married to a man called Archie. Oh my gosh, I think his name was Archibald Brown. She was married to him for, I think it had to be less than 6 months, because if I'm not mistaken, she got an annulment because he was a drinker and it was a lot of domestic violence going on, But I remember the night that my karmic dad showed up at our apartment, which was weird because anytime we had to spend time with him, we had to meet him in different locations because my karmic mother never wanted him to know where we lived at, because he was the type of person, he did not want her dating anybody, and he would hurt them if he found out that she was dating someone. So we had to move around and meet him in different locations or whatever. But one night there was a knock on the door, and the next thing I know, my karmic dad came busting up in the house, and he walked straight into my karmic mother's bedroom. And like I said, she was married to a man named Archibald Brown. I think he was Jamaican, actually. Archibald Brown, she was married to him at the time, and my karmic dad dragged him out the house. He was in his pajamas. He dragged him out by the back of the pajama shirt, by the collar. I just remember sitting in the living room watching him get dragged across the living room towards the front door. And I don't know what happened. I heard it was a scuffle inside the hallway or whatever, but from what I understand, I guess Archie broke free and ran or something like that. But that's the way my karmic dad would give it up. He was not a joke. Even when it came down to me, it was weird because he was very protective of me. I'm not going to sit here and act like he treated me badly, because he actually did not. People feared him, and he normally didn't. I don't remember seeing him hang around a lot of people or anything like that. I remember him having one friend. I believe his name was Mims. Now, I'm not sure because, as I said, all of these memories are coming back to me little by little. Every day I get a new memory, but I think I remember the name Mims, but I definitely remember Harriet. I think Harriet was Mims's wife. I know they lived in the projects way back in the days. I think that's when the projects had first started getting built, and it was actually really nice. That's the crazy part about it. And I loved Harriet. She was awesome to me, actually. If I'm not mistaken, I believe she was a nurse. If I am not mistaken, I believe Harriet was a nurse, but Mary Kay was her jam. She loved Mary Kay. She was no joke with her Mary Kay. She was trying to get that pink Cadillac. And she also did hair because she had a white salon chair in her kitchen. I used to love going to her house because I used to love my hair being done, but no one ever wanted to do my hair because I was tender-headed. So they didn't feel like dealing with me fidgeting around and crying and stuff like that. And I get it, but I mean, still, you're supposed to do my hair. But she would press my hair and curl my hair. Oh, I used to love going to her house. She used to sneak me snacks in her room, and I know this actually made me get emotional when I woke up. And I totally forgot about this. I remember the night Harriet was having drinks or something. I don't know what she was doing. But she called me in her room and she showed me a picture of a baby. And she told me, "That's you." And I took the picture and I was staring at it. And I asked her, "Can I have this?" And she said, "No, you can't have it. And don't tell anybody that I showed you this picture." I remember that. It's weird because I don't remember what the picture looked like. To this very day, I have no idea what I look like as a newborn or anything like that. The only picture I remember is I must have been walking already or in school already. I don't know. But this was a newborn picture. This was like a picture from the hospital kind of thing. And I never saw that picture again. I never saw that picture again. But I totally forgot about the fact that she showed me that picture and she told me, "Don't tell anyone." Matter of fact, she said, "Don't tell anyone that I showed you this picture, especially your mother." And I said, "No, I won't, but can I have it?" And she said, "No, I can't give it to you." And then she snuck me some snacks and then I had to go back in the back room to finish playing. I remember that, and that actually made me emotional. Like I said, guys, I'm sharing these things with you guys, not just for myself, but also because it's little things like this that, who knows, one day these may be the puzzle pieces that I need to put together in order to figure out who I am, where do I come from, who's my real family, what all has happened to me. I'm ready to face all of those things. And so the more I'm ready to face all of those things, the more my memory opens up. And I don't even have to be sleeping. It doesn't have to come in a dream. Sometimes it just pops in my head. Something different just pops in my head. All kinds of different experiences, different names, different streets. These things just pop in my head. Just like I know we stayed at my Karmic Father's father house. I guess I would make that my Karmic grandfather. I believe it was across the street from a woman named Miss Cumberbatch, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know. I know I woke up, I remembered like a Dean Street. I remember Gates Avenue. I remember Herkimer Street. And of course, what's the one thing that came to my mind? The fact that my karmic mother told me that my karmic dad is the one who gave me my name, Livonia. And I asked her, "Well, where did this name come from?" Because I hate it. I always hated this name. I just hated it. When she told me, well, we used to live on Livonia Avenue in Dumont in Brooklyn. And if you were a girl, it was going to be Livonia. And if you were a boy, it was going to be Dumont. So of course, one day I cut school because I wanted to see what Livonia Avenue and Dumont looked like. And I was disappointed because it was the worst. It was the worst over there. And I was thinking to myself, so wait a minute, what would make a parent want to name their kid after this area? Those of you from Brooklyn back in the days, you know what Livonia Avenue and Dumont looked like. I mean, who would want to name their kid that? Like, what? But I remember when my karmic mother told me, yeah, he's the one who named you. She said it was either going to be Livonia or it was going to be Dumont if he was a boy. And you got your middle name Celeste from your Aunt Celeste on my karmic father's side, I guess. Well, who knows? Maybe all of that was a lie. I'm not sure. But that's why I'm just glad all of my memories are coming back. And it's funny because even though he was well respected in the street, he was never scary to me. And I used to see some of the most horrific things sometimes, actually, because, you know, he was a methamphetamine addict. You know, I remember one time being over at my karmic grandmother's house, his mom, over on Vernon Avenue in the projects. I think it was the 3rd floor, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to remember all these things. But I know it was 300 Vernon Avenue. That I know. And he was about to cook for us. He was chopping up some chicken. He was washing some chicken and chopping some chicken up. But he left and came back. And we didn't know that, you know, he was high. But I was sitting there talking to him. And he was cutting the chicken and he sliced his finger. But it's almost like he almost sliced it. It was to the bone. And he didn't realize it. And I screamed, you know, "Oh my God, you cut your finger." And he looked down at it like it was nothing. And he just was like, "Oh, don't worry." And he wrapped it up and he said, "Let me go to the hospital, get this banded up." Well, he went to the hospital and then came back. And they must have given him some painkillers or something like that, because he came back in a worse state than he was when he left. So bad that, we were sitting at the table eating, and he sat down at the table. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with when someone who is taking drugs and they nod off, but he was like nodding off to the left, so much so to where he was like hanging off the chair, like his knuckles was on the floor. And I mean, imagine that as a child. I'm sitting there looking at him, and I'm like, hey, snap out of it. Are you sleeping? What's the matter? You're young. You don't know that this person is high. You don't know anything about that. But you just looking in shock. And it's funny because when we get home, I would tell my karmic mother, well, actually, the so-called older sister, she was the recorder who made sure everywhere we go, she would give my karmic mother updates on everything that happened everywhere we went. But that situation, I told my karmic mother about it. Like, he was leaning to the side, he was falling asleep or something. And she didn't really say much. And I didn't find out the truth about that until I got older. And of course, started figuring things out on my own, just, knowing what's going on in the world. Like, oh my goodness, he must have been doing that lean that everybody's talking about, when you are under the influence and you nodding out. But I'm not sure why I remembered all of that, but it must be relevant. I know it's things that I've actually gone through. So again, like I said, you never know what's relevant and what's not relevant. So I'm getting into the habit of just documenting everything, because you just never know what's relevant and what's not relevant. And the thing about it is, I don't know, the only person that I know who I felt could even remotely help me know who I am was my karmic aunt Denise. And that's only because she's been around before everybody. She's been around before my karmic mother and all the kinds of things, even though everybody treated her like trash. And that's just my personal opinion from my observation. They all treated her like trash. They talked trash about her behind her back, smiled in her face, they used her and everything like that. But she was crazy loyal to my karmic dad. Loyalty is an understatement. Her loyalty was undeniable when it comes to my karmic dad, and he practically raised her. So if anybody knew anything about him, it would be her. But she's loyal, like loyal soil kind of thing, and that's all right. I respect that, because at the end of the day, I would never try to get her to be disloyal or anything like that. I know I've had to ask her flat out, do I belong to this family? I had to use those exact words. Do I belong to this family? Because it doesn't feel that way. I feel like I'm an outsider. She never really answered that, though. It's almost like that question keeps getting dodged. Every time I ask anybody that question, the conversation changes. I know she has her way of doing things and saying things. The only thing she said to me was, your mother was out there. And I just paused, like, tell me everything. How out there was she? The only thing I remember, like, a man outside of my karmic dad was a man called Winston. I know her and my karmic aunt Denise, they used to go hang out at some place called the Boat or something like that. And I remember this man Winston always coming around. He used to drive a black limousine. I think she used to get bread from him, because he would come around. He was around for as long as I can remember. He was around for the longest. But my aunt said flat out, your mom was out there, and I was in shock, because she portrayed herself to be this goody two-shoes who never did anything wrong. But my aunt begged to differ. My aunt begged to differ on that one. She said, no, your mother just plays the role, but she has skeletons in her closet. So I always made a mental note of that, because that was my experience as well. I know the last time I saw my karmic dad, it was when he was living on Dean Street. He was living in like the basement of a brownstone, and he was married, I guess, and had a son. I think his son was also called Simeon Jr. I'm not sure. That was the last time that I saw him. And I guess that's everything I can remember from my dreams, everything that I wrote down. But all of this stuff just flooded into my memories and flooded into my dreams, and I just wanted to make sure that I am transparent when I speak about my life, because I'm going to put it all together. I am going to put it all together. And the more passionate I am about it, the more vivid my dreams get, the more memories come flooded back to me. And I will know the truth about who I am one day. I will know the truth. If it doesn't come from outside of me, then I just pray that the information comes to me via my dreams, via memories, anything. Or maybe a song will help me remember something, maybe whatever, I just have faith that I will figure out my true identity, because I have a right to know who I am. I have a right to know if I'm not supposed to be a part of some family that I was placed into, which I do believe that that's my situation. And if that's the case, I have a right to know who I really belong to. I have a right to know what is my real name. I obviously hate my name. I've hated my name forever. I have a right to know my real name. I have a right to know my real birthday. I have a right to know these things. But you guys know how it is. If people have information on you and they know that you want to know that information, they'll withhold it from you just so you won't know. So I'm just relying on myself. I'm just going to rely on my dream, hopefully. And that's just going to be good enough for me, because if any of you out there are going through something like this, then you have a right to know who you are as well. The Karmic Father that I had, I really thought that was my father. I really, really did. And I even questioned why my so-called older sister looked just like him, and I did not. So I just left it alone, but I questioned that. But as I said, my quest to get to the bottom of who I truly am, it is real, guys. And if you're going through this, then you have a right to know exactly who you are. You do. We all do. We have a right to know, because we're not crazy if the truth of our existence matters to us. We are not crazy if we've been through so much that at this point, all we want to know is the truth, so we can move on with our lives feeling whole again. We want to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and we just want to move on. That's all we want to do, is just move on with our lives. We're not crazy for that. And hopefully we all can help one another with different ideas on what we can do to try to put our pieces together. We're not crazy if we want to help one another, and we're not crazy if our true identity means something to us. I know I'm not crazy, and neither are you.